breaking story here. The Chicago Bulls have called a press conference for tomorrow morning, and there's high speculation and a report that Michael Jordan will retire from basketball forever.
Sudden and shocking retirement of the NBA's greatest player, Michael Jordan.
La noticia cayó como una bomba. Fanáticos, jugadores y expertos no podían creerlo. Apenas meses antes, Jordan había llevado a los Chicago Bulls a la gloria por tercer año consecutivo. ¿Por qué iba a dejarlo todo en el mejor momento de su carrera? Inmediatamente la NBA y los ejecutivos de los Bulls de Chicago organizaron una rueda de prensa el 6 de octubre de 1993 en la que Jordan anuncia su retiro de manera formal.
My decision not to play the game of basketball. When I lose the sense of motivation and the sense of prove something as a basketball player, it's time for me to move away from the game of basketball.
¿Realmente Michael Jordan perdió la motivación y el amor por el baloncesto? ¿O había algo mucho más oscuro detrás de su retiro? Mientras el mundo intentaba asimilar la noticia, puertas adentro de la NBA se gestaba una historia mucho más perturbadora, una que nadie se atrevía a contar. Aquel año de 1993, Michael Jordan estaba en la cima del mundo. Acababa de ganar su tercer campeonato consecutivo. Era el atleta más famoso del planeta. Su influencia iba más allá del baloncesto, convirtiéndose en un ícono global. Sin embargo, en el punto más alto de su carrera, todo cambió. De repente, sin señales previas, Michael Jordan anunciaba su retiro del baloncesto.
Having to lose someone to death. I mean, we definitely lost someone who's inspired us and thrilled us.
That I've heard, and I'm shocked. I'm just as shocked as the next person. The guy's a competitor. If I had to bet, I would never say he would ever retire. You'd have to throw him out of the league. But life is bigger than basketball.
The thing that probably bugs me, because if a friend of yours make a decision, I think you have to always stick by him. Mm-hmm. But I think we had always made a thing that we were going to retire the same year. So that's the thing that disappoints me more than anything. I wanted, and I think he wanted for us to retire together. We came in together. We wanted to lead together. But obviously the events of this summer have changed everything. So I can understand that. But I just want him to be happy. And that's my most important concern.
My words is just to tell him that I'm here for him. I love him. And whatever he decides to do, I'm behind him 100%.
¿Por qué alguien que lo tenía todo decidiría alejarse del juego que lo convirtió en una leyenda? Para responder a esta pregunta es necesario retroceder en el tiempo y analizar los eventos que marcaron su vida en aquellos meses. Uno de ellos, el más doloroso de todos, ocurrió el 23 de julio de 1993. La noche del 22 de julio de 1993, James Jordan emprendió un viaje en su Lexus rojo, un regalo de su hijo Michael. James iba rumbo al funeral de un amigo en Carolina del Norte, pero lo que parecía un viaje rutinario se convirtió en una pesadilla. Después de esa noche, nunca más se supo de él. Pasaron 2 semanas sin noticias. Al principio, nadie se alarmó. James tenía la costumbre de desaparecer por algunos días, pero el 2 de agosto, su hija Sis Jordan recibió una llamada preocupante. Su padre seguía desaparecido. Días después, la familia se enteró por las noticias de que el Lexus de James había sido encontrado desvalijado en un área rural.
In South Carolina, but police have refused any comment. 4 people have been arrested for stripping and stealing the elder Jordan's car found last week in Fayetteville, North Carolina. None of those charged are said to be murder suspects. Jordan's body was found August 3rd. The Jordan family has released a statement saying they are shocked by the sudden loss. They're withholding further comment while the investigation is underway.
Algo terrible había ocurrido. Las autoridades finalmente encontraron un cuerpo en descomposición en un arroyo de Carolina del Sur. Tras realizar la autopsia se confirmó lo peor. Se trataba de James Jordan. La causa de muerte fue un disparo en el pecho. Inmediatamente la familia organizó el funeral.
It was a very difficult moment for me, and somehow I just kept my head high and look at the good of it. You know, the time that we used to spend, and the education that he gave me, and I thought about all the things that he used to tell me. Just turn a negative into a positive, and here I was dealing with him in that way. It was tough.
La policía trabajaba en encontrar a los responsables. Ese mismo día, las autoridades arrestaron a dos jóvenes, Larry Martin Demery y Daniel Andre Green. La versión oficial decía que fue un asalto al azar. Sin embargo, la historia no convenció a todos. ¿Por qué la familia no denunció su desaparición antes? ¿Cómo pudo estar ausente por semanas sin que nadie sospechara nada? ¿Fue realmente un trágico evento al azar? ¿O tenía alguna conexión con los conflictos ocultos de Michael Jordan fuera de la cancha?
Yesterday, the Charlotte Observer reported that Hugh Rogers, the attorney for one of the teenagers accused of killing James Jordan, has new information concerning the case. Rogers now believes that the two suspects are innocent, that someone else murdered James Jordan, and then the two teens stumbled upon the James Jordan's car. He declined to give further detail.
So you're saying there's a strong possibility that his father was murdered because he wasn't paying back his gambling debts?
I don't know. Again, I can't be specific. I don't know if it wasn't paying back. I don't know what, again, the specifics of it were, but I was led to believe that it had something to do with his gambling problem. Okay. Exactly what, I don't know. And honestly, I didn't care enough to look into it.
Okay.
Y aquí es donde todo se vuelve aún más perturbador. En esos mismos meses, Michael Jordan estaba en el centro de otro escándalo, uno que amenazaba con derrumbar su legado y que la NBA intentó ocultar a toda costa. Michael Jordan era un competidor nato. Para él, ganar no era una opción, era una necesidad. No apostaba por dinero, apostaba por la emoción, por la adrenalina, por demostrar que nadie podía vencerlo. No importaba contra quién jugara. Un compañero de equipo, empleado, periodista, empresario, siempre quería ganar y estaba dispuesto a arriesgarlo todo para hacerlo.
Don't show the money. Don't show the money. How much you want? Wait, I got look. I need another quarter. Hey, you only need one. Shit. Oh, that ain't no good. Not that one. See, they get all the tries till they get one closer, and then I get 3 or 2 tries to beat them. This is the last one right here for me. Oh, all right. How many tries? I get 3 tries. Man, that's 2 tries on that one. That's 2 tries. Yeah, look how far it is. Okay, Jerry Krause, negotiate with somebody else.
But he would come up to the front. He's like, "What are you guys doing? You mind if I play?" I remember John Paxson looking at him and going, "Why in the hell do you want to play with us? We're playing for $1 a hand." And I remember he looked at him and goes, "Because I want to say I got your money in my pocket."
But I tell you what, I've never been under more pressure. And I apologize to Michael for saying this. So we'd be playing golf with certain people, and we'd be playing a couple $100 a hole, nothing but. And then he'd be playing some guy for like $100,000. He's like, "Charles, pick that up." I'm like, "Just put this for $200. He's like, "Pick that up, Charles. Get out of my way. You're in my line." I said, "Well, how much is that putt for?" He's like, $300,000. I said, "Let me get out of your line." Hey, you like seriously? It was crazy, man. They were paying for like hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was crazy.
Pero esa obsesión lo llevó a una zona peligrosa, y la NBA lo sabía. El primer escándalo público ocurrió en 1991, durante los playoffs contra los Sixers de Filadelfia. En plena serie, Jordan fue visto apostando en Atlantic City. La historia fue confirmada por el escritor Mark Bansil, quien lo acompañaba aquella noche. Un año después, en febrero de 1992, la historia tomó un giro aún más turbio. Eddie Dow, un empresario de Carolina del Norte, fue asesinado en un violento robo. Los atacantes se llevaron $20,000 en efectivo, pero entre sus pertenencias, la policía encontró 3 fotocopias de cheques firmados por Michael Jordan, por un total de $108,000. Los investigadores determinaron que el dinero estaba vinculado al pago de apuestas. Ese mismo año, tras ganar el campeonato de la NBA, Jordan fue visto apostando grandes sumas de dinero jugando al golf con James Slim Bowler. El problema era que Bowler no era un simple aficionado al golf. Estaba siendo investigado por narcotráfico.
Well, I'm in the shop. It was Golf Tech on Roosevelt Boulevard in Monroe. And a guy come running through the door. He said, Slim. I said, "What you want, man?" He said, "Michael Jordan down to the golf course." I said, "I don't care about that. What you want?" "Well, man, they down there gambling." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "What they playing for?" "Whatever, 50, 100, I don't know. I don't have no money to get in the game, so what are they playing for?" So I said, well, I looked over my shoulder. "You say 50s, 100s, or whatever?" He said, "Yeah." So I looked over my shoulder, and I called one of the guys that work with me, that hustle with me around the world. I said, "George, get my golf clubs. We going to work." let's go to work. He grabbed my golf clubs. We jumped in my car and we went to the golf course. And I caught Jordan them coming up number 9. And I walked over, I said, man, can I get in y'all game? Can I play? He said, well, whatever. I said, well, he smiled and I smiled, and he was running the show, so I'm very, very quiet. Now just remember, kill a mosquito with a sledgehammer. You don't need to put any brags on what you can do. Just be quiet and enjoy the atmosphere. So we started playing from that moment until the end that we played was in Hilton Head. That was the last time I seen Michael other than in the courtroom.
Cuando Buller fue arrestado por las autoridades federales, encontraron entre sus pertenencias un cheque firmado por Michael Jordan por la suma de $57,000. Jordan tuvo que testificar para explicar los motivos de ese pago. Aseguró que era solo el pago de una deuda de apuestas en golf.
If you look at it, they took $57,000, $153,000. They added the 53 and the 153,000 and the 57,000 to give you over $200,000. Now, once they give you over $200,000, your sentence level will go higher and you get more time. Now, if you don't, now, I mean, this, and then coming right back to when I say a political thing, like this book will tell you, once Michael did not go to the White House and Jesse Helms was in the Senate, was a senator at that particular time from Monroe and Wingate, that is a political slap in the face.
La NBA no podía ignorarlo más. En 1992, abrió una investigación interna sobre los vínculos de Jordan con las apuestas. Sin embargo, la investigación se cerró rápidamente. Oficialmente no encontraron pruebas de que hubiera apostado en partidos de la NBA, pero la liga le hizo una advertencia. Debía cortar lazos con personas de dudosa reputación.
He assured the league that he understood the gravity of the quality of his associations. We had quite a conversation on that subject. It probably didn't have to take more than 5 minutes, but it took considerably more than that. And we got certain assurances from him on that subject, and we'll be following up with him on that.
Pero en 1993, en medio de los playoffs contra los Knicks, el New York Times reportó que Jordan fue visto apostando en Atlantic City alrededor de las 2:30 de la madrugada. Cuando la prensa lo cuestionó, Jordan minimizó el asunto.
It's attacked in my private life, and I really didn't like it, and I don't agree with it. But I felt a need to come out and express that and tell the truth so you guys can quit hallucinating and taking it further than what it is. You know, and now you know what it is from my standpoint. Anything else that you hear is totally false if it's not to what I just told you. And that's the honest truth. And that's all I can tell you.
Pero el escándalo crecía, y lo peor estaba por venir. Días antes de las finales de 1993, Richard Esquinas, un empresario con quien Jordan jugaba golf, publicó un libro donde aseguraba que Jordan le debía $1,200,000 en apuestas.
In my mind, based on what I've seen, Michael Jordan has a serious problem. He's in serious denial, and he needs help, and I hope this book is very pivotal to him getting help.
Is it possible that this is just a guy who loves to play golf, who has a lot of money, obviously, and to make it interesting, wagers large sums, and then thought in a friendly atmosphere that it wasn't really for real, that you were talking about monopoly money? So I owe the guy a few $100,000, then I owe him $1 million. It doesn't matter. It's between friends, and we're just kidding around.
You don't kid around for this kind of money, this kind of wagering. And as Michael was chasing and the debt was increasing to the 1.2 that it ultimately got to, I was very insistent that we stop, and I was very insistent that if we continued that I expected payment, because it was something I really didn't want to go into, but I did. And he did, and he understood the obligation.
The media has taken it far greater than what it is. Soon, whenever I walk away from this game, I think that's the only thing that people are going to say was a bad thing about Michael Jordan. No, I didn't commit a crime, but he gambled. And if that's the least that I could be considered or have on my repertoire or my resume, that, hey, I'm a competitor and I gambled, let's say $500,000, and yet I'm still living. I'm not broke. Financially, I still think I'm set. I don't have to work. And I choose to do whatever I choose to do once I leave the game of basketball. Then I'm happy.
El escándalo ya no podía esconderse. David Stern se vio obligado a abrir una segunda investigación sobre los problemas de apuestas de Jordan. Para ello, la NBA contrató al ex juez federal Frederick Lacy para investigar las actividades de apuestas de Michael.
Yes, I agree. The legitimate issue is the association of players and the question of who they associate with and what it does with respect to the league, and what steps the league should take to deal with that subject. I'm just a little sensitive on the subject of the course of perceptions. I mean, we try to deal very directly with a number of concerns here, and we'll deal with the issue of gambling as well.
And you're satisfied the message has been received by Michael and others?
I'm satisfied. If it's a good message, whether it's with your family, your kids, whatever, you have to keep delivering it. And we, with our Players Association, will be dealing with this in the course of the summer, and I'm sure for some time to come.
Pero esta vez, la NBA actuó de forma extraña. La investigación se manejó con total secretismo. Nunca antes la liga había investigado un escándalo tan grave de forma tan apresurada y silenciosa, con tal de evitar un escándalo que pudiera destruir la imagen de su máxima estrella. ¿Por qué no se interrogó a Jordan si era él quien estaba en el ojo del huracán? Era evidente que David Stern estaba más interesado en proteger la imagen multimillonaria de la liga que en descubrir la verdad sobre las apuestas de Michael Jordan. Y luego algo inesperado sucedió. El 6 de octubre de 1993, Michael Jordan anunciaba su retiro del baloncesto, pero lo que pasó desapercibido en ese momento fueron las siguientes declaraciones que al día de hoy es todavía tema de conversación.
5 years down the line, if that urge comes back, if the Bulls have me, if David Stern lets me back in the league, I may come back. But, that's an option that I would never close on. I like to have that option, and that's something that I'm willing to deal with and take the chances with.
Amongst the circles of the inner people involved in the NBA, that he had a gambling problem, and the commissioner asked him to step away from the league until he got those demons corrected, and then he was going to come back, and that's exactly what happened. So it was definitely something that everybody talked about.
So you're going to confirm that David Stern did. That is the reason why, in your eyes, that Michael Jordan stepped away from the NBA because of the problems he had with gambling circles.
And he did. I'm sorry that we cut that off a little prematurely, but he did.
Again, I don't have firsthand knowledge of this, but being that I was working with the NBA at that time, I was told two things. One, that he was told to leave the NBA around the time that his father got murdered because stories were about to come out, and there was a lot of heat on the fact that because of Michael's gambling habit, his father paid the price. And the NBA didn't want the press, so they asked him to leave for a while. That's when he went to play baseball. And then when things settled down, he came back. The plan was always, from what I was told, for him to come back. Now again, I heard this from a source I believe was pretty knowledgeable, somebody I knew pretty well, inside the NBA. So for me, it's secondhand information, but I thought it was reliable. And then putting it all together, knowing that, Michael did have this gambling issue, that is very possible that could have happened.
Varios días después de su retiro, David Stern cerró la investigación exonerando completamente a Jordan, lo que generó aún más dudas y rumores sobre las verdaderas razones del retiro de Michael del baloncesto.
Is it possible? I definitely think it's possible, but it's tough to say. For David Stern, that'd be a tough decision. Am I cash cow, or is this going to leak out? So who knows?
Yeah, for sure.
But I will tell you that David Stern is very good at burying stories and controlling the narrative when he wants to through the press. So.
Las preguntas aún persisten. ¿Fue realmente una decisión personal retirarse? ¿O la NBA lo obligó a irse silenciosamente para evitar el colapso de la liga? Pocos meses después, Jordan haría otro anuncio que dejaría al mundo en shock. Pero esta vez no sería en una cancha de baloncesto. Después de anunciar su retiro, Jordan le comunica al propietario Jerry Reindorf sus intenciones de jugar al béisbol, lo cual accedió a darle su bendición, ya que era también propietario de los Chicago White Sox, y así, Michael Jordan comenzó un nuevo capítulo en su vida.
I said to him, "What do you want to do? What are you going to do?" He said, "I want to play baseball." He explained to me that it was always his father's dream that he'd be a major league player.
Para muchos, este no era solo un nuevo reto deportivo. Era un homenaje a su padre. James Jordan siempre había soñado con ver a su hijo jugar en las grandes ligas.
Yeah, my father and I talked about, way before he passed, me retiring from basketball and then playing baseball. And the final year that we won the championship was like his biggest push to go and do it. No one could present a challenge for me at the time, other than what my father was presenting to me, which was to go and play baseball.
Según familiares y amigos cercanos, Michael vio el béisbol como una forma de lidiar con la pérdida de su padre, algo que lo sacaba de su zona de confort, algo que le devolvía una ilusión. Pero el resto del mundo no lo veía así. Los medios de comunicación deportivos fueron implacables. Analistas y jugadores de grandes ligas se mostraron escépticos. Para ellos era un capricho y una apuesta al fracaso.
I resent it in a way that, this is all I've worked for my whole life, and then a guy can come right in and get the opportunity that I've been looking for.
I think, it's a case of a guy who's got some connections and has a big name, taking advantage of it.
When you saw the Sports Illustrated cover that said, "Bag it, Michael," what did you think?
That's an unfair shot. I felt they felt I was disgracing the game. The game is not a game. It's not a religious game. It's a game. It's America's game, and I think everyone treated it like you're not supposed to play it if you don't play the game your whole life. I mean, that's not the way it should be.
And Michael Jordan now with a 6-game hitting streak.
Sin embargo, los fanáticos no pensaban lo mismo. A donde fuera, las multitudes lo seguían. Las instalaciones del equipo se vieron abarrotadas de seguidores que solo querían ver a su ídolo en acción, obligando a los directivos a reforzar la seguridad.
Reaction, I think, of the fans. He's the only guy that both sets of fans were cheering for. So if he did something, it was a lot louder than if anybody else did anything. When he got in the game, it became a different.
The stadium was just electric, and the announcement of Michael Jordan erupts. Doesn't matter what kind of fan you are, you hear his name, and the whole stadium's going to go crazy. And then to have a successful day like he did, I mean, are you serious? That's the kind of thing that just really had everybody on their feet.
En sus primeros meses, la realidad golpeó fuerte. Su promedio de bateo era mediocre y muchos lo vieron como una prueba de que nunca podría triunfar en el béisbol. Pero lo que la mayoría ignoraba es que Michael Jordan estaba mejorando. A pesar de los números, los entrenadores y expertos en béisbol veían un progreso notable, pero luego algo despertó dentro de él. En septiembre de 1994, Jordan volvió a Chicago para jugar un partido benéfico organizado por Scottie Pippen. Ese día anotó 52 puntos. La semilla de un posible regreso al baloncesto había germinado. Poco después, un evento inesperado cambió el rumbo de todo. El 12 de agosto de 1994, la MLB entró en una huelga laboral. Los equipos comenzaron a buscar jugadores de reemplazo para continuar con la temporada. Jordan tuvo que tomar una decisión. Rechazó la opción de ser un jugador de reemplazo y notificó a Jerry Reinsdorf que dejaría el béisbol. El experimento había terminado, pero su historia estaba lejos de acabar.
It was a failed opportunity to play baseball. That's what they think. For me, it was the best thing that could have happened for me because it allowed me to go back to the game with a stronger passion. At the same time, I was able to understand the love that these minor league baseball players have, making $1,500 a month. $1,500 a month, which is nothing. But for them, it was big. To me, to see that helped me put things in perspective, to understand the platform that I was on in 93, that when I went back to it in 95 and 96, I appreciated it even greater.
Después de meses de incertidumbre, Michael Jordan tomó una decisión. 2 palabras bastaron para sacudir al mundo. I'm back. Pero su regreso no sería fácil. ¿Podría recuperar su trono? Lo que sucedió después cambió la historia del deporte para siempre. Haz clic en el video que aparece en pantalla y descubre cómo su majestad volvió para reclamar lo que le pertenecía.